Stop her before she steals something." The store owner's roar ripped through the hushed, crystal-clear atmosphere of the showroom, more piercing than the sudden blare of the security alarms. Every head snapped toward Alina Vance, a woman holding nothing but her elegant clutch and an air of quiet defiance. In a heartbeat, private security guards swarmed her, ready to manhandle her across the polished marble floors as hidden cameras whirred. "Mr." Julian Aethelred, the store's proprietor, stood behind the main counter, a sneer plastered on his face, certain her humiliation was absolute. But the man who would walk through those antique brass-handled doors next would make the entire establishment choke on their judgment. The heavy, sound-dampening doors of Aethelred and Sons' fine timepieces hissed softly, sealing Alina inside. The showroom was a museum of luxury. Diamond-encrusted chronometers and rare earth gold watches glowed under precise spotlights, displayed like untouchable treasures. Alina had come for a purchase, a unique timepiece for her mother's 75th birthday. But before she could take 3 measured steps toward the glass vitrines, the scrutiny began. Behind the majestic dark mahogany counter stood Julian Aethelred himself. His eyes performed a dismissive, calculated inventory of her appearance, from her tailored suit to her braided hairstyle. He leaned conspiratorially toward an associate, muttered a few words that sounded like a command, then straightened. "Madam," he called out sharply, his voice carrying an edge of practiced arrogance, "this section is by appointment only. Unless you are ready for a significant purchase, I must insist you wait in the common area." Alina paused, her posture impeccably calm, yet radiating firm resolve. "I am here to make a purchase," she stated, her voice a low, steady alto. Julian allowed himself a cruel smirk. "Of course you are. Let me guess. Perhaps a prepaid debit card, or maybe you've misplaced your proper documentation?" His tone was laced with sarcasm, designed to travel, and indeed, it cut across the quiet room. Other customers glanced over, their expressions a mix of discomfort and curiosity. Alina placed her clutch gently on the counter, a movement of slow, deliberate confidence. "I asked to see the limited edition Obsidian collection. Please." Instead of moving, Julian gave a subtle, sharp hand gesture toward 2 burly security officers near the entrance. "Stay close. We've had incidents like this before." The insult was a palpable shockwave through the exclusive space. Customers leaned in to whisper, and a few younger patrons subtly raised their phones to record. Alina's dignity was being dismantled in a public spectacle, and Julian was clearly relishing every second. "Identification," he barked, his eyes narrowed. "Official passport, proof of address, income verification, something real." Alina's gaze was level and unwavering. "You are profiling me. You know it, and every person in this room can see your bias on full display." "Profiling?" Julian scoffed, his hands braced on the counter. "I am protecting my assets. Now, show me verifiable proof, or you must leave the premises." When she stood her ground, perfectly still, he slapped his palm on the polished wood with a dramatic flourish. "Fine. I'll handle this myself." He grabbed the phone, his voice escalating with theatrical urgency. "The precinct chief? Yes. I have a highly suspicious individual here, attempting fraud and causing a disturbance. Send officers immediately to Aethelred and Sons on King's Court. Now." A collective gasp swept through the showroom. An older gentleman shook his head slowly, apparently embarrassed for the owner. A student was whispering into his live stream. "He's calling the police on a woman for..." Standing here, Alina remained motionless. She offered no plea, made no defense. She understood that the truth didn't need volume. It only needed timing. Within 3 tense minutes, the front doors burst open. 2 uniformed officers from the Old Town precinct strode in, their expressions stern. Julian greeted them with a triumphant grin. "That's her right there," he barked. "She's trying to scam us with false pretense. Trespassing! Fraud!" The taller officer's brow furrowed. "Sir, what exactly did she do to warrant this call?" "She doesn't belong here," Julian spat. "Look at her. Does she look like she can afford a single strap in this store? Arrest her before she bolts." The officers turned to Alina. "Madam, we need to ask you some questions." Alina met their eyes, her calm unshaken. "Ask whatever you wish, but consider who you are about to humiliate." Julian let out a loud laugh. "Please, she's nobody." But just then, the doors swung open again. A man in a slate-gray suit entered, his presence silencing the room. Julian froze mid-scoff. "Governor Elias Sterling," one officer whispered. Phones shot up, recording frantically. The governor's face was a mask of fury, his eyes locking onto Alina with protective fire. "Alina," he said, his voice carrying authority. "What exactly has happened here?" Julian's smirk collapsed into fear. "Governor Sterling, sir, I didn't know she was—" "You didn't need to know," Elias snapped. "You needed to treat her as a customer, and more importantly, a human being." Alina's voice was steady. "This man accused me of fraud, called me a thief, and summoned law enforcement because I dared to shop here." Elias turned to the officers. "Stand down. This woman is my wife, the First Lady of this state." Gasps erupted. Julian's color drained. A student live streaming nearly dropped his phone before shouting, "She's the governor's wife." The taller officer stiffened. "Governor Sterling, we had no idea. You had no reason to be here," Elias said firmly. "This manager used you to humiliate an innocent woman. Against your wife," Alina added sharply. "And not just me. Any woman who looks like me could have been subjected to this." Julian stumbled backward. "It was a mistake. A misunderstanding. I apologize." "No," Elias said, stepping closer. "It was arrogance. And arrogance has consequences." He pulled out his phone, dialing with deliberate precision. "Legal affairs, get me the director. Pull every state contract, license, and permit related to Ethelred and Sons fine timepieces. Effective tonight." Julian's knees buckled. "Please, you can't." "I just did," Elias replied coldly. "And tomorrow morning, the security footage from this store will be on every news channel. The people will see how their First Lady was treated." The students' live stream spiked into hundreds of thousands of viewers. Comments poured in. "Justice. Fire him. Never again." Julian trembled uncontrollably. "Governor, Elias, please, just one chance to fix this." Alina's gaze was unyielding. "You had your chance when I walked in. You chose humiliation instead." Elias turned to the crowd, his voice clear and commanding. "Let this be absolute truth. Dignity denied will always bring swift accountability. Tonight, this store symbolizes what we are fighting against, and we will not rest." Whispers swelled into a storm of outrage. Reporters rushed forward, shouting questions as cameras flashed. Julian Aethelred shrank under the exposure he could not escape. Within 48 hours, the fallout was devastating. News anchors replayed the footage relentlessly. The hashtags number Dignity Denied and number Aethelred Exposed trended worldwide. Protesters gathered outside every branch of Aethelred and Sons, demanding justice. The corporate board scrambled. By week's end, Julian was fired. The parent company faced lawsuits, and stock prices plummeted. At the Capitol, Governor Sterling introduced sweeping reforms. Mandatory anti-discrimination audits for businesses partnered with the state, independent oversight committees, and harsh penalties for racial profiling. Alina stood beside him, not as a victim, but as a catalyst for change. She had never raised her voice that night. Her silence and composure had been stronger than Julian's desperate shouts. And when Elias walked in, every smirk and insult collapsed into ruin. At the next press conference, the next gala, the next State of the State address, the lesson remained etched in memory. Dignity is not a privilege, it is a right. And for those who forget it, the Sterlings had already signed the order for their reckoning.